Chapter 16. Deceiver of the Blind. Humble beginnings and pride. At the age of 20, in a small corner of my living room, the Deceiver of the Blind album Symphony of My Apocalypse was recorded. A small corner in a one-bedroom bath apartment was my home music studio. The first 5 black and white art covers were hand-drawn on plain printer paper using a mechanical pencil and eraser, and later I inverted the colors. Necessity will make you very creative with your limited resources. Little by little, I bought the pieces to the vast puzzle that were needed for a music studio. It is truly amazing what you can do with technology these days. I will forever be grateful to music software companies for creating software that helps people attain their music dreams. I want to clarify that I am not being endorsed by any brands mentioned in this chapter. I am simply discussing my real-life experiences. Furthermore, my gratitude extends further for all my musical influences and artists. I grew up with classic rock and heavy metal bands, then later branched out to heavier, darker music, who inspired not just my tones but my music composition and style. The root of my music has always been a mix of classical music and blues. Classical composers like Antonio Vivaldi, Beethoven, Mozart, and Bach remain my main influences. Bands and artists that inspired me include Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, Pink Floyd, AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, Boston, Iron Maiden, Scorpions, Dio, Rush, Metallica, Megadeth, Halloween, Gamma Ray, Luca Turilli's Rhapsody, Styx, System of a Down, Ghost, Amon Amarth, Bathory, Avatar, Trivium, Cradle of Filth, Billy Talent, Rise Against, Lacrimosa, and many other bands from ABBA to Journey. For those music gear nerds, I use the following tools to record every Deceiver of the Blind song and album. If you want to make a home music studio and get the results I got, the following is all you truly need. Instruments. 2014 Jackson Kelly XMG series with EMG-JH Het set pickups. 2014 Jackson Rhodes Signature XMG series with 8185 EMG pickups. 2007 Gibson Flying V with EMG-JH Het set pickups. Epiphone Matt Heafy Les Paul Custom 7-string. 2016 Epiphone G400 Standard. 2011 Epiphone Les Paul Standard. Ibanez GSRM20 Micro Short Scale Bass Guitar Black. Presonus PS49 MIDI Keyboard. Software and hardware. Presonus Iris 3.5 Studio Monitors. Presonus Studio 1.3 Artist DAW, Presonus Audiobox 96 Audio USB 2 Recording Interface. Bias FX by Positive Grid. Eavesdrummer by TuneTrack. Eastwest Quantum Leap Gypsy. HP Desktop Computer. Creating my own clothing brand was a lifelong aspiration, and I found a semblance of that dream through the development of my band's t-shirts and merchandise. Reflecting on my journey, I recall the days when the idea of transforming my hand-drawn designs into tangible shirts seemed like an impossible feat. However, fueled by determination and a clear vision, I embarked on a relentless quest for knowledge and resources. Big ideas have small, humble beginnings. It was truly a dream come true to have an album, band merchandise, a music studio, and the skills to turn the music dream into reality. Necessity will compel you to do the impossible. Necessity is what makes you adapt and overcome. Artists are starving because it is nearly impossible to be commercially successful, and hunger motivates them. Do not underestimate the utility of necessity. Do not underestimate the starving artist. Coming from a low-income background, recording an album at 19 was conceptualized as impossible. How could I afford to pay a producer hundreds of dollars to record not just one song but 11 songs if I could barely afford to buy 2 guitars? I needed to afford the tools to record my vision, just like a painter needs his brushes, colors, and a blank canvas to execute his art. Starting the journey had more problems than solutions. I asked myself, what about the rest of the talent, such as the singer, composer, bassist, keyboardist, and lyricist? A guitarist can't do everything on its own. My goals were dreams that would fade into fantasies for a long time. However, after researching modern ways of recording music, I learned that the dream was not too far away. I just needed to become everything I needed to be by overcoming all my obstacles. For me, since day one, it has been all about the narrative and art form, not about money. Not caring about money, recognition, or acceptance, with a Beethoven-like narcissism and pride, I made my visions a reality at age 20. By any means necessary, I got rid of any that became an obstacle to me. The pride of being alone and striving to be unique in my music journey carried me. Prince, what you are by accident of birth. What I am through my own efforts. There are and there will be thousands of princes. There is only one Beethoven. Beethoven, from a letter to Prince Karl Lichnowsky, 1806. It's incredible how far pride will take you. However, pride is always the precursor to a fall. Growing up poor taught me the best lessons in life. That money cannot buy virtue, self-control, talent, personality, a disciplined character, and a great physique. Composing becomes much more effortless, natural, and beautiful when you go with the flow and let go. You must let the melody and rhythm possess you. An artist is only as good as his tools. We have all the tools an artist could wish for nowadays. Now, we must learn how to use them to make our vision possible. Born on March 26, 1997, I wondered why I would release my albums on my birthday. The answer was that I wanted to celebrate something on what was supposed to be a special day. I saw how others would celebrate with friends and family and have a good time, but I always remembered my birthdays as a teenager and young adult as the loneliest day of the year. A family of 4, mom, dad, brother, and I would sit and take a picture cutting the cake. My parents would take the picture in their work clothes. They would try to make the best out of it after coming home tired from work. I will always be thankful for their sacrifices because if it wasn't for them, I would have not been able to become an artist since they provided a stable home. They raised me with examples of virtue and hard work. My parents taught me by example what a healthy marriage looks like. As my music developed, I promised myself I would release my albums on my birthday to celebrate something I would always be grateful for: my talents and gifts. I didn't need others to be happy. I already had what made my life meaningful. Who cares what they think about me? What do people know about peace and meaning anyway? However, when you create something, you don't understand what you make. You do not understand your creation. You launch it into the world along with snakes that you don't know are there. It is a ripple effect. Actions have consequences like the butterfly effect. Henry Ford did not just make cars but the assembly line, which came with cheap manufacturing along with the consequences of cheap manufacturing. In the same way, I didn't know what I was doing when composing my music albums, and to my surprise, my creation had adverse effects on me. Similarly, I do not know what the consequences will be of publishing this book. This book may bring me many new friends, but it may also make enemies. People may simply be envious of your success and attempt to destroy your reputation. Deceiver of the blind. It is taboo for an artist to tell the audience how to interpret their artwork. What I will do in this final chapter is unethical, but I'm trying to prove a point and educate others. I will be going over in detail how I created my art. If you don't want to have the deceiver of the blind songs and artwork spoiled by the artist by telling you how to interpret it, please skip this chapter. Or if you want to check it out first and then come back for an interpretation, then come back later. The Fall of Lucifer. 12. How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. How you are cut down to the ground, you who weakened the nations. 13. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation, on the farthest sides of the north. 14. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Isaiah 14:12-14. These verses from the Bible were the inception of both the song and my band Deceiver of the Blind. While the Bible has many interpretations, my interpretation was that of many Christians that this described the fall of the beautiful angel Lucifer, whose name translates to light-bringer. Not everyone is creative, but many people have the potential to be. It just takes a lot of learning and discipline. Our brains have the power to imagine, to see a potential future, to have a vision, and to make it a reality. You can also participate in the creation process, but everything comes at a cost. What is the price you are willing to pay for gifts you have to earn with pain and knowledge? Will you sacrifice time, a romantic relationship, a social life, and peace for a better reward? Will it be worth it for you? All of these aspects of my life were sacrificed for 9 years, and it was well worth it. The most beautiful things in life are earned, not given. All my albums have the theme of the journey to the underworld. It's much too common in mythological stories. But the kicker is that my true journey was into the darkest reaches of my mind. I knew I needed to find something of value there because I was trying to avoid a harsh reality so I could not be oblivious to it. I had a nagging feeling punishing me with neurosis. Later on, I found out that it was my mission to go into my hell and confront the unknown to make me whole symbolically. This was the beginning of what is referred to as my psychological rebirth and self-actualization. So much of me needed to die. The religious hypocrisy, the cognitive dissonance, and the ignorance, to name a few. The deceiver of the blind narrative is like the Bible. It has a story, and the albums are assembled from many different songs and books. My songs are about narratives that don't change over time, about the human condition. The question is, what is that story about? What are the themes? What is the artist doing through art and music? The music lyrics are about death, romance, tragedy, pain, self-realization, self-actualization, and the human condition. I took Christianity's idea of the image of God as a Trinity, which is the element of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. There's a lot of symbolism in the number 3 in Christianity, so I used it. The deceiver of the blind narrative is portrayed as the deceiver, Michael Angelico, and Dion. There's a lot of Old Testament God and cruel father symbolism, such as the song Heaven's Vengeance Boils in My Heart. The album Heaven's Vengeance Boils in My Heart. Part 2 was the compilation of 4 years of composing experience, 4 years of music engineering practice, 5 years of vocal practice, 9 years of guitar practice, all boiled down into 1 hour and 40 minutes of music and art. Everything was woven together in a beautiful way. The beauty of the album is that you can rearrange the songs and lyrics in different ways to get different narratives and still make it make sense. Like the Bible, which is a book composed of many books. But the way my album was published was how the narrative made sense to me. It is the ending I chose. All this time, all I wanted was what money couldn't buy, a form of immortality through the achievement of my magnum opus. It is the pinnacle where talent, skill, and hard work intersect, representing the moment when an individual reaches their maximum potential at the perfect time and place. You too can accomplish great things. All along, there were many purposes for undergoing the frustrations of mastering a skill. Among them was to learn many lessons that school and people could not teach me. It's impossible to get blood from stone in the same way it's impossible to get spirituality from others or objects. My art and music taught me to live instead of dying and fading away in a job I hated. Only I could build this bridge to cross the river of life. The purpose was to grow as an individual, to get back what I had lost in childhood. But I feel like I grew too fast, and yet I was only 23. But it is still better than being a fool in a fool's paradise. I poured every great musical, lyrical, psychological, and philosophical idea I had into Heaven's Vengeance Boils in My Heart Part 2. I remember feeling mentally and physically exhausted. However, I did earn something far more valuable than money, my full personality and peace, by immortalizing my visions better than I had envisioned. Without further ado, let's dive into the symbolism of my art. The Deceiver, Lucian. Carl Jung emphasized the initial step toward enlightenment involves confronting the shadow, acknowledging the darker aspects of humanity, realizing that all the terrible things humans have done were perpetrated by individuals. And recognizing our own capacity for such actions is essential in this journey. In my music, Lucian was meant to symbolize an individual whose actions blow up to Luciferian proportions. The deceiver was to symbolize Lucifer. Everything he did was blown up literally to Luciferian proportions. It was all the darkness and evil I did not want to admit within, which is what Carl Jung termed the shadow. Michael Angelico was to represent all the virtues in practice. Dion was to symbolize the archetypal man, not a god nor an average mortal, but a person who earned godhood through his actions. He was the ideal to aspire to. He has become virtuous like a god by conquering his desires and impulses. However, he was not created 6 years after the inception of my music. It is my symbol of the Jungian self. The self is the symbol of the highest potential, everything I aspire to be, an ideal I made for myself after realizing my ideals were flawed. I simply extracted what was useful and disregarded the vices I disagreed with. By an iron hand, genocide is called mercy. A gift of death is bestowed. Live forever and warned to be cursed. But vicious and venomous goes the eternal circle. With time, Another knife and another God make the same story. What he dreaded he created, thought himself an angel of peace. However, despair he poured from the heavens. From heaven. Shatter are the skies now, a firm ground known, now an empty void. Once he was blind, but now he sees, the story repeats. O suffering voice, a crucified angel you are, thou who ended the story of God, to exalt your throne above the stars. You were too blind to ever see how. Forged is your pandemonium only, and after, your world of gold is born. Of a crucified angel's blood tears by deceiver of the blind. The symbolism of the deceiver drove most of the symphony of my Apocalypse album, which is almost a concept album based on the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse from the Book of Revelations. He came into existence in January of 2016 and not to full flourishing by 2022 with the song To Kill a God. The deceiver is just a synonym for Lucifer. The character is mainly inspired by John Milton's Satan from his epic poem Paradise Lost. Milton's Satan is the intellect. The deceiver is also named Lucian, which is a variation of the name Lucifer. Lucian is the antagonist, if not then the anti-hero. The media portrays the antagonist as an evil genius. They are arrogant, deceitful, and intellectually inclined, however not wise. The best antagonists warn us of the devil, whispering in our ears arrogance, deceit, blind pride of the intellect, and disguising itself with righteousness. Unexpected adverse effects came with gifts and talents that helped me create myself. They included narcissism, arrogance, and a God complex. Dr. Jordan Peterson helped me gain a deeper understanding of myself by elucidating the Catholic Church's cautionary messages regarding the intellect. The Catholic Church emphasizes the extraordinary power of the intellect, viewing it as the highest angel in God's heavenly kingdom, echoing Milton's portrayal. However, caution is advised, as the intellect, when unchecked, can lead to arrogance and a misguided love and obsession for its own creations. This intellectual possession can give rise to rigid ideologies, creating a human-made dogma that eliminates the need for anything transcendent. Symbolically linked to the snake in the Garden of Paradise, this intellectual element subtly embodies the human propensity for evil, identified as Satan. In this perspective, Satan represents an antithetical force driven by malevolence and a destructive willingness, reminiscent of the hostile brother Cain to Abel, opposing the truth-seeking order represented by the Logos. My grandfather had warned me after he died in a letter, "Be careful with your music." I never really understood because I had just picked up the guitar at age 14. It wasn't until 9 years later after his death that I understood. My music possessed me, not in the witchcraft way, but in a change of ideology, blind pride, and arrogance. Furthermore, there's the motif of the puppet and strings in the songs of A Crucified Angel's Blood Tears and To Kill a God. A puppet is quasi-animated. It does not have a soul but acts like it does. It is manipulated behind forces, unconscious forces, biological, sociological, psychological. It questions free will and how much control do we have over our destinies. In a way, it's supposed to symbolize how we can become a possessed puppet who lacks free will because we are controlled by our ideologies. The correct way to conceptualize my existential crisis was an emptiness in my heart and soul, which felt like an eternity in hell. A lot of me was dead wood that needed to be burnt off. Most of it was how my parents raised me, my cultural background, my religious beliefs, and what school was teaching me. When everything and everyone is telling you the opposite of precisely what you believe or wish to do, you begin to think you're insane. Seeds of evil lead to a tree of evil that brings forth poisoned fruits, but the opposite is also true. Jordan Peterson, explaining the psychology and philosophy behind John Milton's epic poem Paradise Lost best, helps encapsulate my song of a crucified angel's blood tears. Milton foresaw a future where growing human rationality and technology could create systems devoid of God, entirely rational and all-encompassing. His warning, depicted in the poem Paradise Lost, is that the rational mind, once it creates and idolizes its productions as absolute, can swiftly turn everything it touches into something resembling hell. I may not have physical sight, but I have intellectual sight. I know what is better for others. This was Lucien's pride that led to his fall. Lucien's evil philosophy and going blind are ideas explored in this song. It deals with the concept of totalitarianism blown to Luciferian proportions. That one person's utopian can be everyone's hell. It's like the Tower of Babel story, a cautionary story against expanding a system until it includes everything. It warns us about being too total or trying to replace God. In the Tower of Babel, people wanted to build a structure reaching heaven, aiming to replace God and blur the line between earth and heaven. It's a utopian idea, thinking we can create a structure so big it replaces heaven. God opposes it, preventing us from making heaven on earth or becoming gods. God is an abstract ideal, meant to keep the ideal separate from any specific person or ruler. When the ruler gets mixed up with the ideal, the state can turn into a tyranny, and the whole government can collapse. Luciferian doctrine. Now, let's explore another inspiration behind Deceiver of the Blind. Whether you're religious or not, you've likely heard of Lucifer. While the name is familiar, the term Luciferian doctrine might be new to many. This concept dates back to the 11th century when the Catholic Church had a stronghold on Europe. During the Crusades to capture Jerusalem, Crusaders encountered new beliefs from Egypt, Greece, and India, different from what they knew in the Catholic Church. One standout story was the snake tempting Eve with the poisoned fruit. In Catholicism, this snake is believed to be Satan or Lucifer, leading Eve astray. However, in distant lands, the interpretation was quite different. According to this alternate view, Lucifer was not evil but a god wanting to enlighten humanity. He was the light bringer, associated with rationality and knowledge. In this narrative, Yahweh was seen as the suppressor of humanity, not wanting Adam and Eve to discover their true identities. This belief became known as the Luciferian doctrine, echoing the Greek myth of Prometheus. According to this doctrine, Lucifer is believed to govern world affairs. As spiritual beings on a temporary earthly journey, our purpose is to cleanse our past, grow spiritually, and return to our spiritual home. However, along the way, there's a risk of forgetting our true selves, getting lost in materialism, status, and power. Without belief in an afterlife, there's a temptation to focus on accumulating wealth and seeking societal validation. The Luciferian doctrine suggests that our purpose is to develop our inner selves, achieving our full potential, rather than solely focusing on external success. This aligns with ideas found in Buddhism and the teachings of Jesus Christ, emphasizing that the kingdom of heaven is within us, as discussed in chapter 10. 21. On being asked by the Pharisees when the kingdom of God would come, Jesus replied, "The coming of the kingdom of God is not something that can be observed." 21. Nor will people say, "Here it is," or "There it is," because the kingdom of God is in your midst. Luke 17:20-21. The doctrine also states that we are God. But the problem is that when we believe this, it can justify immoral acts and prevent us from taking responsibility for our actions. Believing that we are God is a flawed belief, since someone who thinks he is God does not feel responsible to anybody else except himself. Per Wikipedia, for Luciferians, enlightenment is the ultimate goal. The basic Luciferian principles highlight truth and freedom of will, worshiping the inner self and one's ultimate potential, and encouraging and celebrating the same within all. Traditional dogma is shunned as a basis for morality because humans should not need deities or fear of eternal punishment to distinguish right from wrong and to do good. All ideas should be tested before being accepted, and even then, one should remain skeptical because knowledge and understanding are fluid. Whether Lucifer is conceived of as a deity or a mere archetype, he represents ultimate knowledge and exploration, as well as humanity's savior and champion for continuing personal growth. Theistic Luciferians believe in Lucifer as an actual deity. However, Lucifer is not worshipped as the Abrahamic God, but is revered and followed as a teacher and friend. Most theistic Luciferians are followers of the left-hand path. They may adhere to different dogmata from organizations such as the Neo-Luciferian Church or other congregations, focusing on ceremonial magic, the occult and literal interpretations of spiritual stories and figures. Many modern-day pagans also believe that Lucifer and many other demons were originally gods of ancient civilizations that were demonized by the Abrahamic religions. The Luciferian doctrine has influenced the Freemason principle of ordo ab chao, order from chaos, which justifies any actions to bring the New World Order into existence. Many see this as a totalitarian form of world government. The goals of this New World Order are not secret. They are outlined in the American Stonehenge for anybody to see. They are the Georgia Guidestones erected in the 1980 monument, in which 10 new guidelines are engraved in 8 different languages. These guidelines are supposed to replace the 10 Commandments given to Moses. 2 of the most outstanding guidelines say that they should maintain humanity under 500 million people in perpetual balance with nature, which means members need to die for the benefit of a few. This would be the result of the order out of chaos. They also say that family planning must be controlled by the authorities to keep the number down. This type of totalitarianism is explored in my music, which helps better understand the catastrophic consequences of the aftermath of genocide. The character and deceiver of the blind lore lives by the Luciferian doctrine and is possessed by his satanic spirit. The idea is meant to explore the darkness and most evil aspects of humanity. By understanding the evil of humanity, I could realize my prosperity of evil further. Now, is the Luciferian doctrine fact? I don't know, and it doesn't matter to me. What mattered to me was the story. The story became the origins or background for my character, Lucien. The symbol was finally taking shape, so through years I developed the character and its philosophy. Lucien in the song To Kill a God. God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? What was holiest and mightiest of all that the world has yet owned has bled to death under our knives. Who will wipe this blood off us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What festivals of atonement, what sacred games shall we have to invent? Is not the greatness of this deed too great for us? Must we ourselves not become gods simply to appear worthy of it? Friedrich Nietzsche, The Gay Science. Before we go any further, I would like to point out that Nietzsche, like many philosophers, can be interpreted in many different ways. I'm speaking from a common view to interpret him and how I interpreted his philosophy to add it to my lyrics. Nietzsche believed that Christianity died by its own hand. Christianity proclaimed it knew objective truth. The problem is that there is no objective truth, only interpretations of interpretations. However, we are not including math here. Numbers are real, but that's a different topic. We woke up from the lies it fed our generations by tradition. We started questioning tradition and poking holes into its inconsistencies. If it proclaimed to know the truth, then it should not have been broken down by rationality. It was filled with fallacies. Nietzsche foresaw how catastrophic ideologies acted like parasites on an underlying religious substructure. They did this to attempt to organize their thinking. The song To Kill a God is filled with the most profound and complicated philosophical and psychological ideas. It is written from the perspective of the anti-hero who observed the world from above and below, heaven and hell. The lyrics' main questions are: how do you achieve the ultimate vengeance? How do you destroy Western civilization? Its answer: you destroy Western civilization by killing the ideal God, thereby achieving the ultimate vengeance. Also, it asks, what are the consequences of doing so? God's heart is made of gold, pierced at the song's beginning. Why gold? Jordan Peterson teaches us that gold symbolizes purity and incorruptibility akin to the sun at the zenith of the hierarchy. Just as gold remains untarnished, those at the pinnacle are deemed noble and radiant like the sun. The gold medal, resembling a sun disk, is bestowed upon those embodying the ideal and occupying the highest position. As a further example, Dion, another character from my Deceiver of the Blind artwork, has an eclipse behind above his head whenever he appears in a piece of artwork. It is the unison of purity and impurity. The sun and moon symbolize the union of opposites. Dion inhabits the dark world and the heavens. So, at the beginning of the song To Kill a God, God occupies the top position of the hierarchy and is then dethroned by the hero. The hero kills God. But why a hero? Because society no longer worships God but the hero myth. Humanity will worship something or someone. It is a matter of choice, but you do not get to pick a master to serve. However, there is a difference between kneeling down and bending over. So people found another master to worship, the state or their government. Because we would destabilize and move back and forth violently between nihilism and the extremes of ideology. According to Dr. Peterson, Nietzsche predicted the decline of Western civilization as the God ideal was dismantled, leading to instability and extreme ideological shifts. In the 20th century, he foresaw significant casualties due to replacing dreamlike structures with flawed, rational representations. Since then, we've been oscillating between left and right, intertwined with nihilism and despair, shaping the modern condition for Western individuals and increasingly people in general. Since the masses will lose their inner meaning, they will worship their governments to fill the spiritual void, and they will go as far as running like sheep in fields, dying in wars, and being sacrificed for the pride of the state. As a society, do we still live in a Christian culture? Do we still live in the Christian myth? No, not since the Enlightenment. Then, in what myth do we live? We live in the hero myth. Do you think it's a coincidence that superhero movies have made billions? No. Superhero movies have gotten the mythical, narrative, and archetypes, stereotypes of narratives correctly. Why does this matter? Because you're living a story, and good stories appeal to you because it tells the story of your life and experiences, connecting meaning to those stories. We identify with those characters because they tell our stories. We relate to their struggles and wish to have their victories. Their hero's journey is meaningful to us. We escape to a fantasy where dreams come alive and our sacrifices are rewarded. Because sometimes reality is a bitch and doesn't give back what we gave. We are narcissistic in believing that we are in the center of the universe, claiming not to be religious just because we do not subscribe to a major world religion. But a cult, group, and religion are the same thing. We learn from Ernest Becker that regardless of whether the cultural hero system is rooted in magic, religion, or is secular and scientific, it remains a mythical framework where individuals seek a sense of primary value, cosmic significance, and ultimate purpose in creation. This is attained by contributing to something of enduring worth, such as a temple, cathedral, totem pole, skyscraper, or a multi-generational family. The underlying hope is that human creations surpass mortality, showcasing lasting value and affirming the significance of humanity. Norman O'Brien suggests that, despite claims of scientific secularism, Western society clings to a religious essence, expressing a belief that science, wealth, and material goods elevate humans above other creatures. In essence, all human endeavors are both religious and heroic, carrying the potential for fiction and fallibility. Since we no longer believe in God or have faith in Him, He cannot make miracles for us. It is a leap of faith we need to undertake to harvest the fruits of salvation. A myth is a story or narrative that teaches a way of living. The problem with the Christian myth is when it's taken literally rather than metaphorically. Another arising problem is when religion uses a story as an exploitation tool against the masses. The lies and hypocrisy of the incorrect way of living with self-deception are thought to improve things because most people cannot bear the truth, but the truth sooner or later prevails. People don't want the light of the sun. The sun symbolizes enlightenment, but when the sun is ignored, one turns a blind eye, preferring comfortable lies over hard, cold truths. We deny God and thereby that we are spiritual beings, resulting in unjustified suffering. Now that we have discussed a little philosophical background, we will see how it was attached to the song To Kill a God. The antagonist, Lucien, plays the role of a puppet in strings, seeking autonomy and independence from his father. He is an independent thinker. Cutting his strings, Lucien believes he's free but still is skeptical of his free will. Admits knowing that doing the impossible, killing a god, will not turn him into one, and those who attempt to be God will fall because pride is always the downfall of the tyrant. Lucien understands there is no living with killing, that to kill a god is a sin that cannot be forgiven. Realizing that he was predestined for tragedy in a deterministic world, Lucien accepts his fate and sees it as beautiful. After suffering rebirth, Lucien rises as that which is evil and good, understands morality but is not psychopathic. Psychopaths always betray themselves because they betray their future selves. They get into the problem over and over again. They never learn from their mistakes. It is narcissism that blinds them because it makes them feel like they are unique and that they will get different results. Narcissism is the failure to learn from past experiences and mistakes. Psychopaths take advantage of others for their benefit, but in reality, they take advantage of themselves because they are not building bridges but burning them. This is a counterproductive way of living. Long-term gain traded for short-term gain. This is not Lucien. Lucien's philosophy is that we are all a tragic day away from turning resentful and vengeful against a world that doesn't care about our sacrifices, even after making the right ones. The emptiness of the life of others caused by the overindulgence of pleasures, especially from the arrogant and prideful who claim to know the way, causes Lucien to see a world without hope from above and below. Lucien calls everyone cowards since they choose to live in eternal, blissful, ignorant comfort. Seeing himself as an angel or messenger, he recognizes that he was born at the wrong time to be a prophet and save others. But even if born at the correct time, humanity was already doomed through self-destruction. He has no followers, alone in a world without hope for humanity. He reflects on his tragedy. Lucien interprets his God as a cruel entity that mocks his sacrifices and efforts to prevail in his tragic story. Lucien sees himself as a sacrificed in vain Jesus Christ, dying for no one's sins. Shouting vengeance for the hypocrisy and wrongs of his God, Lucien decides to kill God since there is nothing to defend, nothing giving life a matter. Lucien is a tragic character because he has human qualities. You're supposed to be able to empathize with him. Losing the genuine soul love of his life was the final nail in his coffin to prove that there was nothing to lose or to gain for him. In the real world, you should fear a person who has nothing to lose or gain. They are dangerous because they are filled with cynicism, nihilism, and pessimism. In all probability, there are psychopaths or sociopaths. The person who gave his life meaning through vision and love is taken, further twisting the knife in Lucien's heart since he no longer has anyone to save him. He knows that money and gold are of no use to a person who has lost his soul, who lost all meaning in life since it cannot be bought. Blaming God for every tragic event that befallen him, he sees God as the root of the problem of his nihilism, despair, and pain. Lucien's vengeance prevails with an up-and-personal killing through a knife inside God's heart. With an eye for an eye and a heart for a heart philosophy, Lucien confesses to God that he was supposed to be his light, but only darkness and despair were given to him instead. Despite this fact, it was difficult to push the knife and commit the ultimate vengeance. This foreshadows the song's ending. Recalling his lack of free will after killing God confirms that we were bound for tragedy, and that no matter what path Lucien took, there was no possible way for his story to end in a comedy. Why? Because no evil deed goes unavenged. Even though he had so much love to give, it was for nothing since there was no one to receive. This was yet another loss of meaning in his life, as love, one of the most powerful human emotions, was taken from him by the God he so dearly believed in. In utter isolation atop a mountain of symbolic and literal darkness, Lucien's heart screams regret for his betrayal of God. With his blind eyes, he sees spiritually now that the sunset symbolizes the ending of life, but also the era of God, since God was the sun and purity. The highest mountain symbolizes the highest place in spirituality. And on earth, Lucien physically and spiritually is atop the hierarchy through blind pride and vengeance. It asks, was the place atop the hierarchy worth everything dear to you and the pain of others? Therefore, Lucien's last ascent is his final downfall. There is no rebirth after this sin. Despite knowing the sin he is going to commit, Lucien deceives himself that vengeance will restore his peace, and his life ends in self-betrayal and betrayal against God. To kill a god is about destroying the divine ideal. Chaos is what happens when your story falls apart. It's the journey into the underworld. This song is about the chaos caused when the story fell apart. The real reason for tearing things down or killing ideals is so you don't have anything to contrast yourself to. The fact that the ideal exists judges you because every ideal is a judge by default. The song is about killing the ideal that Lucien could not become, so he killed it to no longer be judged by him anymore. It is the symbol of killing the master and the father. The song is written in first person, from the perspective of Lucien in Deceiver of the Blind Lore. The song explores the questions: when you shatter your ideal, where does that leave you? Nowhere to turn, no upward direction. Without an up, there's a significant amount of down. Nihilistic despair leads to resentment towards humanity. You will act what you believe, and the resentment will make you inflict your pain upon others. We learned from Jordan Peterson how Judgment Day is an archetypal ideal because every day is Judgment Day. In simple terms, the part of you that represents your highest values and aspirations is similar to having a judge within you. This can lead to feelings of guilt, shame, and resentment when you fall short of your own standards. Without a clear sense of what you aspire to, life may feel directionless and meaningless. Without an ideal, life lacks direction and meaning. The stricter your standards and the ideal, the more severe the self-judgment, the harsher the ideal. The song To Kill a God explores John Milton's Paradise Lost idea of psychological hell. Hell is essentially being far from the good, when you destroy your own ideals by succumbing to jealousy, resentment, and the urge to bring down others you admire. You find yourself in a situation that feels like hell. The anti-hero adopts the vice completely opposite of redemption by killing God. He knows he's seeking vengeance but is ignorant of the catastrophic consequences of his arrogance, vengeance, and pride. Lyrics like, "Only a god can kill a god," imply he sees himself as a god. He's blinded by pride, arrogance, despair, and vengeance. That lyric also ties into his suicide. If a god can only kill a god, then that could only mean that the anti-hero, who sees himself as a god, can only be killed by someone in the same stratosphere as him. If he's one of a kind by the time he has killed his god, then he remains the only god, meaning that the only one who can kill him is himself. That is arrogance of Luciferian proportions. According to Peterson, the ultimate motivation seems to be causing maximum suffering before committing suicide, similar to the tragic events at Columbine High School. A different interpretation is that Lucien is destroying himself to create life itself, the archetypical act of creation that is inherently linked to violence and death. Life devours itself to continue itself. By default, it asks the existential question, where did it begin? What is its purpose? The human body is so complex and beautiful in a chaotic way that it is like we were engineered by something. Following the vision of creation where life evolves in the savage act of devouring itself to continue itself. We can assume that any being with enough awareness of this is driven to escape it, to openly resist or refuse to obey its place in creation. This can lead to potentially dangerous forms of grandiosity and an unrealistic sense of superiority and uniqueness, which, in the worst case, can lead to mortal creatures believing themselves to be gods. This is what Lucien, in fact, acts out in the songs "To Kill a God" and "Heaven's Vengeance Boils in My Heart." Resentment towards humanity grows. Lucien will be free when his father is dead. Being free from the Creator leads to becoming a creator himself, but like Satan in Paradise Lost, Lucien becomes demented through his vanity, believing in his boasting, which has made him cruel and violent towards those he deems inferior. Lucien is humanity at its worst. When we act of grandiosity without any moral restraint, we feel we deserve more than we have, more than we are. There is a devil inside of us when we believe ourselves to be gods for sure. The consciousness of our mortality can lead to selfish, immoral acts. The desire for freedom is what tempts us towards grandiosity. In Paradise Lost, John Milton wrote the character of Lucifer as appealing and heroic to show just how seductive this temptation is, capable of supporting even the most innocent. Lucien thinks he should reign, not serve. We are not allowed to create. This resembles the temptation of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Creation leads to potentiality being corruptible, even the purest of souls. Creation is perhaps the greatest act of rebellion against our creators. How can you not be torn apart into malevolence and vengeance after experiencing and understanding evil and catastrophe? The song ends with the burial of God. The church bells symbolize death, the funeral of all meaning, of the deity that once gave the world meaning. The tragedy of killing God is so catastrophic that only a rebirth can attempt to solve the problem. It wasn't until the song was finally published when I was 23 years old that I listened to Jordan Peterson's lecture on Milton's Paradise Lost. I had come to grasp the essence of my creation, and art no longer veils my understanding. I now see the peril of the intellect, inclined toward pride and arrogance. It often becomes enamored with its own creations. In Paradise Lost, this is embodied by Lucifer, the intellect infatuated with its productions, presuming there's nothing beyond its own thoughts. This mirrors the totalitarian mindset, possessing a complete system, claiming knowledge of everything, and the belief that implementing it will bring about utopia. It's a form of intellectual arrogance. The problem with Lucian in Deceiver of the Blind lore is that his heaven on earth is everyone's hell on earth. The ideas also mirror the ideas of Johann Wolfgang von Goethe's play Dr. Faustus. 1604, Mephistopheles attains tragic grandeur as a fallen angel, torn between satanic pride and profound despair. Mephistophelian philosophy raises the question, do you want life to cease? Or are you just out for vengeance at any cost? At the end of the song, the anti-hero confesses to God, to the world, and to himself, at the end that his punishment is more than he can bear, which is guilt so deep that it leads to suicide. In the Inferno by Dante Alighieri, he places betrayal in the last circle of hell. The one who receives the worst punishment are those who have committed betrayal, where Lucifer resides for committing the ultimate sin, personal treason against God. That is where Lucian ends up in the end of the song to kill a god, in the ninth circle of hell. Dion, child of heaven and hell. The next deceiver of the blind character we will be explaining is Dion. The symbolism of Dion can be perfectly described by how Jordan Peterson describes the sun-like aspect of the Trinity. The sun-like aspect is a hero that brings order from chaos, defeats dragons, and helps others. It symbolizes the body and blood of Christ, portraying a tragic victim, scapegoat, and triumphant redeemer. Caring for the outcast, experiencing death and rebirth, it is both King of Kings and Hero of Heroes. Beyond the state, it aims for paradise, rescues from hell, and embodies the spirit of the law. Dion is at war with mercy and vengeance. He is personified as the ultimate ideal, and there's no escaping him because every ideal is automatically a judge since it is the thing atop the hierarchy. In the song With Love and Thunder, Dion doesn't kill mothers and children because they are the future of society. In straightforward lyrics like Looking Up, the message is about wishing upon a star. It conveys the idea of aiming beyond the mundane, reaching for the transcendent and following a star, the highest ideal. The star symbolizes eternity and illumination in the darkness. It encourages embracing the transcendent, expressing the willingness to do whatever it takes for personal growth and autonomy. Fun fact: the name Dion came to me on a December morning in 2020. I had never heard that name in my life before, but that night I dreamt I met a friend's brother, and he repeated his twice in the dream. My name is Dion. Dion? Yes, Dion. After that, I woke up and right away Googled the name's meaning. The name Dion is a French boy's name of Greek origin, meaning child of heaven and earth. Perfect. I have the name for the song that needs to be added to Heaven's Vengeance Boils in My Heart Part 2. The song took 2 months to make. Everything fell into place perfectly. The instrument deals with many harmonies and opposite octaves as if two personalities were fighting each other. That's how the song Dion, Child of Heaven and Hell came to be. Listen to your dreams. There's something so primitive and mysterious about them. They will tell you unconscious truths about your life, even warn you about stuff to look out for. In the song My Queen Beyond the Rings of Saturn, Dion has an eclipse behind his head, symbolizing significant periods of change and transformation. During a solar eclipse, a portal for new beginnings opens, while a lunar eclipse reveals energies for completing a journey or shifting course. Peterson compares this to a coin, representing the sun and the moon, with God on the border between day and darkness. Gold symbolizes the sun's purity and association with consciousness, while silver represents the moon's sovereignty in the night sky. The metaphor alludes to the idea that consciousness is integral to being itself, associated with illumination and enlightenment. The eclipse is equivalent to Dion. The sun and moon come together, and it is the union of opposites. The union of my devil and angel is the ideal of my individuality. The albums are filled with profound, nihilistic ideas of despair and vengeance. It was made to make others explore humanity's most profound and most horrifying ideas. The song To Kill a God is written in first person from the anti-hero's perspective. The more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't just an anti-hero, but from the perspective of my version of Lucifer, a Lucifer with human-like qualities. How do you show the world how much resentment, anger, and vengeance you are filled with? By destroying their sacred ideal, their structure of spirituality and reality. You go for the highest thing in the hierarchy and destroy it. But what happens after you have committed the most unholy sin? You realize that there is no salvation for you because it is a sin that cannot be forgiven. You know that to live causes much greater pain than to die. That's what the song To Kill a God questions and answers. It is Lucifer who commits the worst sin of all, betrayal against God. He is, therefore, an unredeemable character. I want to say that most of my songs have the theme of death. The main argument or question that is being asked against existence in my lyrics is, if a so-called all-benevolent God does exist, then why would he allow all types of evil to exist, from children being born with cancer to mass genocide? This is how the 2020 song Storia Biblica can be interpreted. Inspired by my existential crisis, I understood that humanity and nature are the snakes that eat their tail in a way filled with carnage, also known as the symbol of the Ouroboros. The songs mess around with the idea that it is better to have never been born. Do I support that statement now? No, because I know it is meaningless suffering that causes actual pain. If your suffering has a why, you can withstand most of life's struggles. I refuse to believe that humanity is just a mere random result of biological probability. There must be more answers to our existential questions. When we kickstart an idea of an entity being superior to us as God, leads to the circle of creator and creation. Contemplating human existence inevitably leads us to ponder God and faith. Our profound yearning suggests a belief in a truth beyond our perception, a meaningful explanation for our existence, and the profound suffering we endure. That is what I choose to believe. Michael Angelico. The symbolism of Michael Angelico can be perfectly described by how Jordan Peterson describes the spirit-like aspect of the Trinity. The spirit-like aspect is akin to the human soul, the prophetic voice, and the still, small voice of conscience. It emerges with spoken truth, called forth by music, and opposes deceit, arrogance, and resentment. It represents the water of life, burning without consumption, and manifests as a blinding light. In a paradise, meaning a walled garden, it resides. The wall symbolizes culture and order, while the garden embodies nature. The concept suggests that the ideal human habitat is a harmonious balance between nature and culture. The deceiver Michael Angelican perspective is found in songs such as Fruit of the Poison Tree, which is the metaphor for having your eyes opened and the same metaphor for coming to consciousness. It is the song of a rejected philosopher, the song of Nietzsche's Zarathustra. The deceiver sharing the fruit of the poison tree with Michael Angelico symbolizes, we're going to be better together than alone because I'd rather be whole than solely good or evil. The offering of the fruit is the offering of the communion of opposites. Sacrificing certain virtues in pursuit of knowledge and wisdom may result in gaining insights that cannot be attained while holding on to those virtues. Like the serpent tempted Eve in Genesis 3:5, eat of the poisoned fruit, and your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Eating the poisoned fruit won't kill you, as you've been told. It will just open your eyes and make you stronger. To have your eyes open is to find out you're naked. It means to realize that you're vulnerable, to know you will suffer and feel pain, and that you too can be hurt. In every culture, as human beings, we protect our most vulnerable parts with clothes. You shield yourself from the world and from people trying to see into your life. Before knowing you're vulnerable, there's no reason to hide from others. You hide or disguise your insecurities only after you know them. It sounds like common knowledge and obvious, but it is until someone points it out. But proper knowledge of evil means you understand what hurts you, and that you can inflict that same pain upon others for the sake of hurt. Just like Adam and Eve are tempted by the snake, the forbidden fruit gives them knowledge of reality. They awake and become conscious that they will die. Knowledge of good and evil means knowing what hurts you and others. Knowledge of good and evil means you know how to scar someone by giving them something to remember you by. The snake isn't just an enemy, but also your friend, because your friend can betray you. But the worst snake is yourself, because you can betray yourself at any moment. That is why even a snake can be found inside the walls of the garden. That is the symbol of the deceiver being in communion with Michael Angelico. There's always a special bargain because you don't get something for nothing. How much are you willing to pay for the truth? Do you want knowledge and wisdom? It will be at the cost of suffering, loss of innocence, and risk of self-destruction. The snake tempts Adam and Eve. The forbidden fruit gives them knowledge of reality, and they awake and become conscious that they will die. The great wars, genocide, the Holocaust, and the killing of the innocent have been caused by human beings. You're one of them. You're the offspring of that evil in the world. Understanding this means you know how, why, and what people went through to survive the tragedies of history. Understand the evil of such strategies that manage to kill so many beautiful things, and yet so much beauty has withstood tragedy. You're never the same after opening your eyes. Ignorance will never be bliss. Part of you is shattered and sacrificed for a greater whole. You must be willing to give up so much of yourself to reach the darkest depths and therefore hierarchies. Is it worth it? For me it was. If you encounter chaos, you can extract something out of it. You produce creative order. Therefore, order out of chaos. In Deceiver of the Blind artwork, we can also notice how Michael Angelico never kisses Venus. This shows self-control, like Michelangelo sculpting David with a small penis to symbolize self-control. I took Michelangelo's idea of the creation of David and put it into the Deceiver of the Blind lore because it spoke meaning to me. Michelangelo depicted God within the brain, suggesting an analogy between the divine and the structures responsible for consciousness. In another piece of artwork, we see how Lucian is handing Michael Angelico an eye meant to give rise to consciousness through an evil eye or perception. So it's literally Lucifer giving evil knowledge to an angel. It means that the intensest light of reason and revelation combined cannot shed such blazoning upon the deeper truths in man, as will sometimes proceed from his own profoundest gloom. Utter darkness is then his light, and cat-like, he distinctly sees all objects through a medium which is mere blindness or common vision. Herman Melville, Pierre, or the ambiguities. Consciousness has the power to make miracles in your life. Darkness, suffering, and despair give you the power to conceive an idea and foresee how it will shape your future and that of others. It gives you the ability to learn how to use tools to make that idea a reality. Do not underestimate the potential at your darkest hours. Desperation and hunger will help you become everything you could be. Naked I stand, before the whole world without regret, without a care of ridicule. And even though I may look okay on the outside, I have to confess. Mother, I confess to you. I'm broken, I'm shattered. I feel like a labyrinth of chaos and order. Labyrinth of Chaos and Order by Deceiver of the Blind. In the song Labyrinth of Chaos and Order and in the art cover of Children of Lucifer, being naked in front of the world means having the social and cultural judgments of the social and cultural world focused on your self-evident inadequacies. It means your weaknesses are exposed so you can be judged. That makes everyone self-conscious, and that's a real human state. People don't like having their fragility and vulnerability exposed to the group. The two major fears of people are social humiliation and death. The irony is that I exposed myself to the world to strengthen myself. How can you prove to yourself that you do not care about the opinions of others? How do you prove that you don't depend on others for your feelings of self-worth? For me, it was by exposing my insecurities so everyone could see right through me. Publishing the song Labyrinth of Chaos and Order meant I dared to expose myself to the whole world, strengthening me mentally. The Labyrinth of Chaos and Order art cover, or photograph if you will, has a biblical philosophy. My face is asymmetrical due to genetics, and there is more shadow on my right side because of the lighting of the picture. These details symbolize the following. Jordan Peterson describes a painting of Christ's face, as depicted by Michael Angelico, is intentionally asymmetrical. It symbolizes the union of the human and divine aspects, portraying the fully developed person. This ancient representation conveys the ordinary human existence alongside a divine connection, emphasizing the voluntary acceptance of mortal responsibilities. This union is embodied in a book, symbolizing speech and associated with the archetype of the sun, a perfect example of archetypes emerging from diverse elements. This was meaningful because I realized the song Labyrinth of Chaos and Order was a transition. It was a chrysalis. It was written right after the end of Heaven's Vengeance Boils in My Heart, Part 1 was published. The song was also the beginning of album Heaven's Vengeance Boils in My Heart, Part 2. It was when the deceiver of the blind black and white art covers ended and where the colored art covers began. Symbolically, it felt like it was where my neurosis ended because I had brought it to life and made something beautiful out of it. And suddenly, my life was filled with color, freedom, and bliss. There's this classic mythological theme where the wise person is the person who finds what they lost in childhood and regains it. For me, this means that after you have grown wise and mastered a skill or a set of skills, you need to return to being a child to be creative. We can connect this to Nietzsche's third metamorphosis of the soul, the baby, which I explain in Chapter 4. The concept involves going back to the start, not regressing into childhood and unawareness, but instead choosing to return consciously to a childlike state. In this awakened state, you are determined to actively engage in revealing your true self through honesty and contribute to the expression of authentic existence. You are symbolic. Beautiful art acts as a catharsis tool to absorb all your weakness, temptations, and anger away. We are symbolic creatures. We crave meaning and need to derive it from ourselves or something external. The nature of my narcissism is one of the many factors that made my music. Constructive narcissism gives the power to believe you're special and unique, and that you're contributing to the world with the unique gift you were made to give. Through our dreams, we can derive our feelings of self-worth. Through my art, I answered my question, how would you justify your existence without being a sacrificial animal? Many of us, especially extroverts, derive our feelings of self-worth from others. They need people to survive, literally, and they don't get to choose. Extroverts will wither away in utter isolation. They live for people. The mentally healthy ones I worked with were genuine, extroverted, nurturing nurses. It was in their nature to comfort and empathize with people. Their jobs fit them perfectly. But every time I saw how good they were at their jobs, I would question, what would they do if they didn't have people to live for? They need a sickly family, children, friends, and a romantic partner to love, socialize with, and help. Their Achilles' heel is to remove them from people. What then? How should they justify their existence if they weren't sacrificial to others? In that moment, I realized I had hit a dead end in trying to solve the riddle of justifying existence for extroverts. Oh well, thank God I'm extremely high in introversion and that's not my problem. In my experience, I felt saved by not needing others. I could go on long periods without speaking to my best friends or family voluntarily. In 2021, I became so overwhelmed with people due to working at the hospital that I went on 5 road trips and traveled to 32 U.S. states alone. It summed up to spending 31 days in solitude that year, but I digress. Justifying my existence without being a sacrificial animal needed to answer 3 questions. How would I act in a world without people? From where would I derive my meaning? What would prevent me from killing myself, thereby saving myself from nihilistic despair? The answer to my first question had to be, live in moderation with my pleasures. Do not disgrace yourself or do anything that would make chaos of your soul. The answer to my second question in 2 words would be, self-overcoming. I realized that I didn't derive meaning from music, painting, or my lyrics, but from art. I lived from my art. My Deceiver of the Blind music not only helped me transcend my suffering and overcome my mental issues, but also helped me fit all my talents into a whole. Want to be a poet? Write philosophical lyrics. Aspire to be a composer? Learn to play multiple instruments. Dream of being a painter? Paint an artwork for your song. Do you seek to justify your existence without being sacrificial? Make your dreams a reality. My art as a whole helped me overcome and transcend my struggles. It taught me discipline, it gave me my individuality, and it gave me access to the dark truth of myself. We learned from Ernest Becker that an animal deriving its sense of worth symbolically must constantly compare itself to others to avoid appearing inferior. This openly reflects humanity's tragic fate, the desperate need to justify oneself as a fundamental entity in the universe, to stand out, be a hero, and make the most significant contribution to world life. Society, in essence, is a symbolic action system with roles and statuses, customs and rules, serving as a platform for earthly heroism. Each culture has a distinct hero system, demonstrating cultural relativity. These systems assign roles for performances encompassing everyday, earthy heroism exhibited by working hands guiding a family through challenges. Justifying one's heroism is like playing God. The more distinct and critical you become as a human being, the more guilt you bear. Your very creation accuses you, making you feel inferior, questioning your right to play God. This paradox intensifies for artists, especially when their work is groundbreaking and entirely new. The artist's attempt to justify heroism becomes the concrete creation, a testimonial to their unique and heroic transcendence. Yet, as a creature, the artist feels the ephemeral and potentially meaningless nature of their work unless validated from outside themselves. In essence, if you choose to be a hero, you must give a gift. The average person offers a gift predefined by society, while the artist crafts a uniquely personal gift, justification for their own heroic identity. This gift, aimed partly beyond the understanding of fellow humans, is the artist's way of giving to creation itself, to the ultimate meaning of life, to God. Otto Rank and Kierkegaard both concluded that true peace for the artist can only come through full renunciation, giving one's life as a gift to higher powers. This profound act of renouncing the world and oneself, offering the meaning of life to the powers of creation, is the most challenging achievement for humans. It's fitting that this task falls to the strongest personality type, the one with the largest ego. As Newton, the great scientific world shaker, exemplified, renouncing the world and laying the meaning of life at the feet of the powers of creation is the hardest and most profound task one can undertake. Epitaph to the artist. In the midst of the world, the Creator said to Adam, "I have placed thee, so thou couldst look around so much easier and see all that is in it. I created thee as a being neither celestial nor earthly, neither mortal nor immortal alone, so that thou shouldst be thy own free molder and overcomer. Thou canst degenerate to animal, and through thyself be reborn to godlike existence. Animals bring forth from the womb what they should have. The higher spirits, on the other hand, are from the beginning, or at least soon after, what they remain in all eternity. Thou alone hast power to develop and grow according to free will. In one word, thou hast the seeds of all-embracing life in thyself. Pico della Mirandola. At 19, I discovered I was composing songs for my own solace, crafting melodies that resonated with my soul. It was a time when I felt like the loneliest man on earth. I had no close friends because I saw myself as having no equals. Left and right, I saw old classmates and friends overindulge in pleasures like pigs. My biases were correct 7 years later. Most people I knew had yet to become anything of themselves. I felt that I wasn't okay for a long time. However, my life was far more meaningful and prosperous when I engaged in creative activities. I felt and knew I was falling apart, but I kept trying to piece myself together. I would criticize everything I did, not just the artwork itself, but why even bother finishing it? Who gives a shit? What's the point if I don't get recognition of my brilliance? Why keep going if I can't make money out of my genius? What is the utility? What's the point of getting better if I was invisible? My rational intellect was separated from my being. My error and blind spot involved depending on others for my sense of self-worth and validation of my existence. It inevitably led to failure, primarily because my artwork remained unknown to others. After reflecting and researching, I learned our perceptions, actions, and thoughts are all informed and shaped by unconscious motivations that are not part of your voluntary control. This was part of the creative process. In his book Beyond Order, Jordan Peterson teaches us that artists are like pioneers on the border between the unknown and what we know. They boldly venture into the unknown, grab a piece of it, and turn it into an image. Artists follow their intuition, even when faced with possible rejection, criticism, or financial struggles. When they succeed, they make the world more understandable. People engage with the dramas and stories created by artists, gaining insight and seeing value even if they might not fully comprehend how or why. A true artist brings the unknowns of his mind to the known. He moves the unconscious to the conscious. Interestingly, a real artist doesn't know he is acting this out. In a state of flow, the artist combines his expertise and skill level with a mixture of improvisation. His unconscious possesses him. Everything becomes automatic. He already has the tools and skills to make a piece of art. Now, he must surrender to his more profound unknowns and improvise with the skills earned with years of practice. His message must be subjective to the masses, which means, for example, if he were to give you a poem or artwork he made for 100 people, then all of them should have different perspectives on the artwork's meaning. The creative work is a transcendent tool for the audience that helps them relate it to their personal life and personality. Artists help teach people to see what is blind to a shared vision. They dissect other artists, people, and themselves to the core. They represent what they see with symbols and transmit the message of what they know to you and me. Artistic productions such as music, painting, books, and movies are filled with narratives that appeal to us because they speak to our life stories. Through their themes, we learn how to behave. In his book Beyond Order, Jordan Peterson argues that art is not merely decorative. It is an avenue for exploration. Artists serve as guides, teaching us how to truly observe the world. The act of seeing the world is inherently difficult, and we are fortunate to have artistic geniuses who aid us in rediscovering what we may have lost and shedding light on the world around us. On the opposing end of the spectrum, we encounter the false artist who produces art with a message and information that is biased or misleading, aimed at endorsing a specific political cause or viewpoint. By definition, this does not qualify as art, but it is propaganda. Therefore, the creator is not an artist, but rather a propagandist. Art is the manifestation of human creativity and imagination, often presented visually through mediums like painting or sculpture, intended to be valued for its beauty or evocative emotional impact. Per psychoanalytic theory, Dr. Peterson explains, you're a mix of different living personalities inside you, each with its own motivations, feelings, and thoughts, and you don't have full control over them. It's like being a group of internal personalities loosely connected into one. You recognize this because you find it challenging to control yourself completely. Human beings were deeply affected by things that were beyond their conscious control. We only have interpretations to understand when our personalities get out of control. We do this to make it pragmatic. The Greeks believed we would be possessed by deities. For example, the god of war, Ares, is eternal because he has inhabited us for millennia. This is not scientific. A scientific idea is the ultimate truth in our society. But these narratives are mythology and folklore. Before science, human beings used stories to attempt to explain life. This was their psychology back then to explain humanity's truth. Where do you localize the meaning? In the imagistic representation of the words you get from stories. The best of my ideas came from my dreams. I listened to them and tried to decode unaware truths they were trying to tell me. I realized they were narratives shaped as myths. When I was mentally unstable and in my darkest hours, the storytelling had to do with unknowns to me, things I didn't want to know or accept about myself. They were warnings of a future reality. I had to change my path, or my story would end in tragedy. As an artist and mystic, you live in the realm of dreams. Our job as artists is to live in the middle of the unknown and the known. As a creative person, I lived in worlds of fiction to escape my reality, especially as a teenager and young adult, living in a one-room, one-bathroom apartment. The 3 walls in my living room made my home studio. My bedroom became my special place to create a world to escape. I never lost my glorious vision of childhood and creativity. It evolved with different interests but the same hobbies. The creativity originated from preserving childhood, not ridding myself of it. Years later, I discovered that the most intense and meaningful dreams that would make me cry are transcendent religious experiences. Transcendent religious experiences are mystical experiences, are profound and sacred personal encounters wherein individuals believe they have connected with their understanding of God. These encounters often inspire a deep desire for transformative changes in their personal religious life. They are events that bring us out of our ordinary minds, making us feel connected to the world around us. People report accessing them through the use of certain drugs or spirituality, magic, and the occult. They can also be triggered by nature, meditation, and even near-death experiences. By definition, transcendent refers to phenomena occurring beyond the scope of regular or purely physical human experience, surpassing ordinary comprehension. Creative and artistic people move the knowledge of humanity forward. They do that first with their artistic productions. Why do you like music? It gives you profound intimations of the significance of things, and no one questions it. People fear the artists and art because they are nonconformists who will tap into the darkest and most evil truths of humanity. Artists are educators of society. They teach us about the devil inside our hearts. Artists teach us how to tame and exorcise our demons. This is why we imprison art in museums. You can argue the deceiver of the blind song, "Heaven's vengeance boils in my heart," is from the perspective of Lucian, who sees himself as an Old Testament God, who, in the Old Testament, is frequently cruel, arbitrary, demanding, and paradoxical. It was written when I was 18 to 19 years old. At the time, I was suffering from a God complex, also known as the Jehovah complex, when my dark fantasies were at their peak. In The Denial of Death, Ernest Becker defines a God complex as possessing an excessively large ego, where an individual believes they are akin to a god. Those with this complex aspire to attain immortality through their unique talents. Their creative endeavors become a heroic expression, justifying their beliefs and forming a kind of private religion. This personal faith makes them feel uniquely immortal, distinct from the experiences of others. But pride is always the precursor to a fall. The challenge for a genius lies in balancing intense self-expression, eros, which includes creativity and passion, with complete self-surrender, agape, a selfless form of love. Geniuses face the dilemma of creating a work that fulfills their soul, while recognizing that the work alone cannot bring salvation. It's a difficult task to fully experience these intense drives. Perhaps for those with fewer gifts, balancing a smaller dose of self-expression and a comfortable level of self-surrender is more manageable. Furthermore, the lyrics from the 25-minute song Heaven's Vengeance Boils in My Heart perfectly demonstrate the adverse effects of the orderliness and conscientiousness of Lucien's consciousness. With swords made of gold and steel, humanity's blood will spill, the city dies. Blood and thunder. Pierce through the cancer. Hear the hammer of truth and justice. Paradise is forever lost. I cleanse you in fire. Fallen they are, all the people, and shattered are the seeds of evil. Cry and die, be crucified. I hear the sound of a dying son, desperately crying rebirth. Time will not heal the pain and heartache you have caused me. To forgive is to suffer. Time will not heal me, the adorer of sin brazens. Like one last Sabbath, burns the Garden of Eden, after sacrificed from chaos. You're twice born, rise anew from the flame, as a god of chaos and order. Lucien begins to see everyone in black or white extremes instead of arbitrary individuals with very specific life experiences. If someone didn't follow good conservative values or follow the same virtues as him, then he would see them as disgusting, especially sex and drug hedonists. Lucien saw the world contaminated with fools, parasites, animals, criminals, killers, and evil hedonists who only cared about fulfilling their selfish desires instead of showing gratitude for the gift of life by self-improvement. Metaphorically speaking, Lucien takes shape as a Lucifer who has Old Testament godlike qualities of power and decides that it is time for another rebirth, that is, utter genocide of the human race to begin again like Adam and Eve. What Lucien fails to understand is that you cannot give humanity free will and not have the propensity for evil. Humanity must earn morality or heaven by choosing between good and evil. A god cannot choose heaven for humanity because by default free will would be taken away from humanity. In the following section I will discuss how Dr. Jordan Peterson perfectly describes the feelings and rationality of Lucien embodying Hitler in the song Heaven's Vengeance Boils in My Heart. Jordan Peterson teaches us that sensitivity to disgust is linked to a preference for orderliness, which is associated with conscientiousness. Hitler, known for his high disgust sensitivity, harbored a strong aversion towards non-Aryans. In his perspective, the Aryan race represented a pure body besieged by parasites and predators. This metaphorical view fueled his desire to establish strict borders to protect against perceived threats. Hitler's disgust metaphor extended beyond fear. It was an immunological concept. He likened the Aryan race to a body, and to prevent the spread of metaphorical diseases, he enforced strict boundaries. This approach included regulations on ideas, people, and even sexual rules to curb disease transmission. Before targeting non-Aryans, Hitler undertook public health measures, cleaning factories, and addressing tuberculosis. Using insecticide like Zyklon B, initially for pest control, later became the sinister gas in concentration camp chambers. Hitler's actions progressed from addressing bugs and rats to initiating euthanasia campaigns, justified under the guise of compassion for those considered burdensome to themselves, their families, and the state. This perspective on mercy fueled a significant euthanasia campaign in Germany. When I used to say, "Life is meaningless," I knew I was suffering. Still, it was because I realized the tragedy of the contemporary artist. No matter how hard I tried or how talented I was, I would not receive the recognition I craved and earned through my efforts. My talents were mute. If life were meaningless, I could simply sit without doing anything, without suffering, and consequently, it wouldn't matter. However, the problem is that I did suffer, and that suffering made life meaningful. Therefore, life automatically held meaning, and the suffering endowed it with significance. When someone says, life is meaningless, what they're truly expressing is, I'm engulfed in neurosis, deeply suffering, feeling empty. I'm trapped in a void where there's no light shining within my heart and soul, and I'm lost on how to escape it. The artist disguises the inner chaos from others, but he's aware of it. The song and artwork for Requiem for All Pain was the artistic symbol of my symbolic death. It is all crystal clear now after reflecting on it, but back then, it was not even questioned why I was writing that song. It simply happened like a dream or nightmare. The chaos and neurosis within keep the madness alive, thereby the genius. After practice, it's easy to hide a smile and deceive everyone that you're okay. They even mistake you for being more mentally stable and having a more ordered life than them. People are gullible and believe what they see. Most are not intuitive. Perception is reality for most. How did I fix my neurosis? I escaped into my solitude, artistic creation, and nature to keep myself sane, reflect and track what is real and what is a facte. Never deceive yourself. Deceiving and betraying yourself are by far the worst sins you can commit against yourself. The creative type stands apart from the common understanding, viewing the world as a challenge that demands a personal interpretation. This applies to all creative individuals, with artists showcasing this tendency prominently. For them, existence poses a problem requiring an individualized solution. When one rejects the collective answers to life's challenges, they must craft their own. The work of art, then, becomes the creative individual's ideal response to the complexities of existence, addressing not only the external world, but, more importantly, their own internal struggle as a uniquely separate person without shared support. The creative person grapples with the weight of their extreme individuality and the associated isolation. You can debate whether or not an interpretation of an artwork is valid, but it is about being pragmatic. It gives insight into more profound truths that rationality sometimes cannot reach. It pulls you together and aligns you with purpose, the purpose being understanding ideas to prevent tragedies. A song is a dream of the future, then you try to make it into reality. But everything comes at a cost. Just like dreams, nightmares become a reality. If you're hell-bent on vengeance, if you have a heart full of hatred and resentment, it will manifest itself in terrible fantasies. These were the main ideas of my music in my youth. Luckily, music was my outlet for acting them out in real life. A collective dream can also be a nightmare. Someone's utopian future could be everybody's nightmare. Powerful and whole nations can get caught up in collective dreams. That's what happened to Nazi Germany, China, and the Soviet Union. The youth brushes it off because they didn't live it, and their realities aren't even close to experiencing the pain of previous generations' suffering. This angered me and filled me with resentment towards my generation. To see so much ingratitude for what previous generations had sacrificed for today's youth. Art speaks to us profoundly and can even move us, literally. People fly overseas just to see priceless artwork because things like love, hope, virtue, and beauty are worth living. As of July 2022, I have traveled to 33 U.S. states and have been to Rome, Venice, Florence, and Milan. The beauty and artwork that inspired my music did not disappoint. I traveled thousands of miles to see what physically and emotionally moved me. Deceiver of the blind artwork and music is a theodicy. A theodicy is a systematic and thorough effort to explain why evil exists and why God allows it. Essentially, it aims to answer the question, where does the evil we encounter come from? In doing so, a theodicy seeks to help humans understand the ways of God. Sociologist Max Weber interpreted a theodicy as a broad social problem. Paraphrasing from Essays in Sociology, people often want more than just being fortunate. They seek assurance that they deserve their good fortune, especially compared to others. They want their luck to feel legitimate, and religion often provides a justification for the goodness in one's life. The information in my dreams was filled with revelations, so my first album was The Revelation. I was only 18 years old and thought I was driving my music forward, but it was an internal force driving me forward. Dreams come from a void that is your mind, or as I like to refer to it, a labyrinth. Unexplored and new pathways lead to newfound information. Dream information is not produced but just happens. My music is supposed to be a beautiful quasi-religious experience, so I compose using choir orchestra and an arena-like feel. The reverb is supposed to fill something, and the sound fills the empty space. In Jordan Peterson's book Beyond an Order, he argues that beauty helps you find what you've lost. It reminds you of things that stay untouched by cynicism. Beauty points you in the right direction and makes you notice both the less valuable and more valuable things around you. It was not an easy thing to understand what I was trying to do in the beginning. Deceiver of the Blind songs are intensely patterned in layers. Like reality, you're born into a place and time. You don't get to choose your family, teachers, or where you are raised. So much of you in the beginning is not under your control, nurture, or nature. You're a cell in a body, the body being society, a culture, a country. You communicate your emotions to make your reality. Music symbolizes being in time and space. This is how music represents the layers of life coming together and colliding like harmonies in so many notes played at once. Music helps you participate in a drama. Music enables you to identify. The ideal woman for me has become eternal through my artwork. I drew inspiration from the women I encountered, using them as a muse to express my heartfelt ideas through song. However, the women I met weren't the same as those depicted in the artwork. In a way, I sang a fantasy of a hyperreality that helped me understand paths of life I would want to avoid or fulfill. It is pragmatic for me. Just like fiction is true, you want a distillation of exciting things. If you can't make money out of your art, use it for therapeutic purposes. It will fill your emptiness and help you connect with your spiritual side. It will teach you how to live, something schools don't teach. How? By tapping into your unconscious, bringing it to the surface, and helping you understand the human condition. Psychotherapist Adam Lane Smith argues that many artists create not just for themselves but to influence others, encouraging them to think, grow, and inspire fellow artists. Authors write books not only for personal satisfaction but also for an audience of readers. Therapists choose their profession not just for personal fulfillment but to make a positive impact on the world. Whether it's your job, craft, or hobby, they all have the potential to create meaningful impacts on people. If you haven't experienced the impact on others, it's challenging to envision the kind of positive legacy you could leave behind. This is the purpose of this book, to help others find their purpose and to educate humanity. It is fulfilling to help others, especially with the same problems you once had. The most profound insight of life needs to be earned. And after all, I still ask myself, do you have vengeful, suicidal thoughts of resentment as a 26-year-old? No. They've been long gone because I matured spiritually and psychologically. I am at peace with myself. I wish everyone to become the best version of themselves. This is why I'm writing this book, to act as a catalyst of self-improvement for someone. The journey through hell will either force a mental breakdown upon you or a psychological rebirth. You make your choice. This book delves into my journey of experiencing rebirth instead of succumbing to a mental breakdown. It explores the process of healing and self-improvement, addressing the quest to mend what is broken and embracing the transformative journey of becoming. For personality transformation and growth to occur, you have to earn your wisdom by delving into the unknown and confronting it. There are no shortcuts, no life hacks. You must do the work. Judge people by their results. Look at those who drown in self-pity and embrace a victim mentality. How far have they gotten in life? Not even close to their true potential or achievements. Choosing to accept and face adversity is a victory in itself. It's better to strive for meaning than to die a coward in luxury. The intertwined strands of fate weave both our experiences and our existence. But how much of it is truly fate, and how much is mere coincidence? Sometimes it's just self-fulfilling prophecies. And sometimes the events that befall us are simply chance occurrences, but we choose to imbue them with meaning in the chaotic randomness of life. It is a quintessentially human endeavor to seek meaning in a chaotic, arbitrary universe. Finding significance in the smallest cosmic coincidences is one of the most beautiful aspects of the human condition, as it offers solace and strength in the face of life's tragedies. I have embraced the unpredictability of fate and forged my own path, shaping who I want to become, rather than allowing circumstances to dictate my destiny. You must lose what is of high value to you to gain peace and the strength to withstand the tragedy of a blessing. Growing up in poverty was a blessing, imparting invaluable life lessons and fostering gratitude for my journey and ascent. Realize the misconception that everyone is not scrutinizing and judging you. The reality is that people are preoccupied with their own problems. Truth remains indifferent to feelings. Instead of aiming to be the best, strive to be better than yesterday. Embrace learning through questioning, attempting, failing, and persisting until success. Share your knowledge after triumph, fostering continuous growth. A dragon is not consumed by its fire. I'm writing this book to reclaim the memories I've lost and preserve my journey. It's a personal endeavor, stemming from a sense of loneliness. I harbor no regrets. I don't regret carving my path, and I love everything misfortune and fortune thrown at me because, in the end, those misfortunes made me who I am today. The temporal nature of existence dictates that everything with a beginning must have an ending, and this is not only acceptable but essential, as it imparts a definitive meaning to the narrative. As I conclude the writing of this book, I find myself reflecting. Did I truly become everything I aspired to be at the age of 23? The answer, a complex interplay of yes and no. I'm thankful for turning my childhood dream of becoming an artist into reality. At 23, while composing 3 albums, working, and attending school simultaneously, fatigue settled in, and a desire to rest emerged. Yet, I knew there were going to be new fields I would want to explore and master. Life, after all, would be mundane without its adventures. I express gratitude for having witnessed the beauty of the world I yearned to experience. My life has been shaped in a manner that readies me for the inevitable embrace of death. For years, I erroneously believed my tragedy lay in being born in the wrong time and place. I have chosen to believe the opposite to be true, as if I were born precisely where and when I needed to be. I am a broken vessel, a messenger of the divine sharing wisdom, beauty, and truth with the world. My brokenness serves as a precondition for my role as a liberator. Since the age of 21, I've understood the human condition and recognized suffering as a precursor to greatness. Every piece of art I have made, every note in my music, and every word in this book is an offering, woven from my gifts and curses to a nonverbal universe that replies with only silence. Life is a tapestry woven with circles, each representing its own season. The gentle rains of spring, the warm sunshine of summer, the tumultuous storms of autumn and winter arrives. cloaking the world in beautiful tones of white and silver. Within these circles, we find the essence of existence, the ebb and flow of joy and sorrow, growth and challenge. Like the changing weather, life presents us with varying experiences, each offering its own lessons and opportunities for growth. Embracing the entirety of these circles, we navigate the journey of life, finding beauty in its diversity and richness. Surrendering to the universe, I embrace its reality, acknowledging the cyclical nature of life. Life's beating has made my heart beat, sculpted my soul, imparting humility and unveiling the essence of existence. I wish I had more wisdom to share, my friend, but this is the extent of it. There's nothing left for now. Life is truly a gift, precious even in its moments of suffering. Never forget, you are your mother's great